Now arrives the hour of action.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it.
For depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury.
To subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws.
All experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed.
But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security.
We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
And we're going to take our country back from these people.
Let us be aware that while they preach the supremacy of the state, they are the focus of evil in the modern world.
Built on taking children and separating families. The Department of Child Protective Services has become a protected empire of the judges.
I come to say to you this afternoon, however difficult the moment, however frustrating the hour, it will not be long, because truth will rise again.
Let us be aware that while they preach the supremacy of the state, they are the focus of evil in the modern world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Marches Live with Rod McCall. It is Thursday the 14th, I believe. And what are we looking at here until Sunday? Well, the march is the 18th, so we have 4 days. And 3 days until the 17th. I can't wait. I'm heading out tomorrow morning. Our guest tonight is also heading out to DC tomorrow. Can't wait to see him. Like I told you yesterday, this show works out perfectly because I really wanted you guys to hear him, to know about him before you see him speak at the event coming up, and because you don't want to miss a word he says. He wrote the book called For the Love of Eric after his son. He uses the proceeds from that book to talk at events all over the country. He was on my original list of speakers because how he tells his story. The story itself validates why he tells it, but above that even is how he tells it. It'll be a valuable lesson for all of us. So without further ado, welcome Rod to the show. How are you?
Thanks, Ted. Appreciate being the opportunity to be on a part of your show. I'm doing real good.
Good. So let me go to some of my notes here. So when you go to DC, like we were just talking about before, you'll be speaking in front of a lot of friends. But more importantly, you'll be speaking in front of a lot of people who haven't heard you speak before, maybe haven't even heard about you. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted you as a speaker, because going to a lot of rallies, one of the common themes, one thing that happens a lot is and it's understandable, is, you know, people want to tell their stories and they have a tendency to sometimes go off on tangents, just like I do. If you've watched the show, you know I can go off for half an hour about something. But, you know, seeing you speak and then listening to interviews you've been on, how you tell it is very focused. I don't know if it's because of practice or what, but it's never belittling anybody. It's never putting down your ex. It's the entire situation that really is to blame, and that's where you put the blame, is where it belongs. And the fact that you're able to tell it so directly and passion where it needs passion, no passion where it doesn't need it. It's really interesting, and it was a learning experience for me, listening to you tell your story in a way that's informative and informational. And it really gets across the worst parts of what we're all going through. And you know, giving credit where credit is due, I would not have met you and maybe not have heard of you if it wasn't for Christy Beck. And the way things have evolved for you, the people you know, you generally speak in kind of professional settings for psychologists mainly, correct?
Yes. I did a Bubbles of Love event last year, not the April symposium, but the one before that.
Yeah.
And talked to some of our local here in the Dallas area PA support groups where I've shared my story. But the symposium that we were together at back in April was a real professional setting that I was extremely honored to be a part of and to be asked to speak there. I also spoke at, it's been almost a year ago, at the Texas Hill Country's Counselors Association, and was able to share a little bit with them where they're, at the front lines. So, yes, I've done kind of, I guess you would almost say, a balanced. So being able to speak at the rally or after March on Monday, wow, I am honored beyond belief.
Well, yeah, it's part of the goal of the show is to reach out to every part of this movement. So you have, men, women, fathers' rights, mothers' rights. You have family court Title 4D, CPS Title 4E, and then one path to this end is the psychology community. And really, you are, whether you like it or not, are kind of the bridge for the rest of us to that community, because I know that those people, those professionals, will be listening to you. They listen to you. They've heard you. They know you. So a situation like this event, where it represents everybody, or supposed to represent everybody who are affected by all these different things, family court and CPS, it'll be good. It's good to have you there, because people who know you in that professional community they wouldn't have a reason to brush it off. They'll be like, oh, Rod McCall is speaking. I've heard Rod McCall speak at our events. So therefore, this hopefully to them will be a more credible event. That's how I view it. I mean, that's how I see you. So
well, thank you. It's kind of, I have to say that it is very humbling, the exposure that I have been blessed with in relation to how I've been received. I do not see myself as a bridge. I see myself as me. Right. Here's Rod McCall. Here's my story. And yet I feel very honored that it has been well received by multitudes of folks. And I've know how to say it correctly, I suppose. I talk all day teaching students, so you'd think I have words, but having the opportunity to share what happened to Eric and to myself has been a fantastic experience, meeting people from all over the country at the symposium, meeting people who came from all over the world. Was so exciting. And to be able to discover that I'm not alone. When I started this journey, I thought that it was just me and my ex was uniquely qualified, but I have discovered that no, she wasn't uniquely qualified, that there are so many folks. And if I can use my story to help and save the lives of other people, other kids in particular, so that other kids don't have to suffer the way Eric did, and other families don't have to suffer like mine has.
Yeah. Oh, it is well received, because it's a touching story, and you know, I don't want. I'm kind of, you know, I wanna let everybody know exactly who you are and what you went through, and at the same time, I don't want to give away too much before you speak. You know what I mean? So, you know, part of the story, and if people saw the clip that I put in from yesterday's live ad for the show, it was a clip from one of Jeff Morgan's videos where you were speaking at a committee hearing, and you were mentioning CPS and how they are unqualified in most cases. Just like Jennifer Wynn was saying last week, there was a child found encased in concrete. And this is a direct result of people meddling in lives without having any training, really not knowing what they're doing. And that's what you were touching on in that clip. And really, that area of us, the people, and I'm talking to somebody in Maine right now who literally just lost his case, and I've been telling him through the last couple of weeks that I've been talking with him, get your federal appeals case ready. Because, you know, he was saying that my family's going to be okay, I have a good case, and in the back of my head I knew exactly what was going to happen in his situation. And these are the people that really are the most desperate out of us. People whose families are intact, who aren't going through a divorce, maybe some of them after this experience, but it's really, talking to some of these people affected by CPS, it's very clear that they are just going through a hell that even my hell didn't really compare to, because even though I didn't see my son for months at a time in certain times, at least I knew he was with his mother, even though even different times I wasn't sure that he was safe. But I can't imagine somebody having custody of my son who isn't his mother, who isn't related to him. That, to me, would spark something something different. And so, that being said, I was wondering if you could share firstly a little bit more in depth about that experience, about your CPS experience, because I know it wasn't for very long, but even like the good or the bad and the good that came out of it, if there was any.
Absolutely. The CPS, and for me, I thought, oh my gosh, I've since discovered it seems to be a common strategy or tactic to use CPS. I have discovered that CPS, they are a necessary evil, where their attempt to do good is, I believe in their hearts. People that go into it, they don't go into it for money. They go into it to try and help. Unfortunately, parental alienation is something that they are woefully undereducated on. And so as a consequence, when we're dealing with high custody divorce issues, like mine was, they fall back on, well, what is their training? Well, their training is different from what is necessary when dealing with, again, with a high conflict divorce. And so mine started in the summer of 2010 when she claimed that I had spanked Eric so hard that I left a palm print on his tail end. And they could not get Eric to corroborate this. And this event supposedly had happened right after Christmas, between Christmas, New Year's, 2009, 2010. So better part of 6 months before.
Wow.
That's the case. And then later in early October, she went again, and this time she was able to better coach Eric into what to say, and CPS then said, well, we've got a real investigation here. And they then go and visit Eric at school, and as a consequence, as a school teacher, the worst thing that can happen is to be accused of inappropriate behavior with a minor. And so, and she knew that, because I worry about those kinds of claims. I've had plenty of other teachers make comments about their experiences. And so it was something she knew that I may take great pains to make sure that there's never an opportunity. And so she created or invented one and had Eric make an outcry. They investigate, and in the matter of a couple of days, the CPS, because the girl that investigated was very young, I would imagine 25 or younger, and she had already convicted me. I was as guilty as could be, and she hadn't even heard my story. What I had to say when I tried to explain to her that Eric's mother had a background in policing. She was clinically trained as a psychologist. She was a criminology professor at a local university, and that all this was manufactured for her benefit. And she didn't care. She wasn't listening to what I had to say. And so within a matter of a couple of days, Eric was removed from me, was not allowed to visit him. What was interesting is that I took Eric away from her too for a period of 2 weeks. And she got to pick where Eric went to. She got to pick the person, which was somebody I had no idea who it was. And we then proceeded for 4.5 months where I was not allowed to see Eric. And CPS, from that moment in early October 2010 all the way until the end of October 2011, insisted and maintained that I was a danger to Eric.
Wow. And so what the outcome of that, though, how did you, because a lot of people in these situations, when CPS is called, they may point to both parents as unfit and try to keep the child for Title IV incentives. How do you think that, or why do you think that didn't happen? How did you get through that CPS process without the worst?
In that particular, to answer that, I'm not sure. Theirs was a 2-week temporary removal.
Okay.
And at the end of 2 weeks, Eric went back to his mother.
Okay.
Then we went from the end of, or from 1st of October until middle of February 2011. I didn't get to see Eric. He was taken away from me, and CPS did their level best to make sure that I was not allowed to see him. It took a court order from the judge, in our case, to restore visitation. And he stated in the February 2011 hearing that, and again, this is a direct quote, He said, I've heard a lot of accusations against this man, but I haven't seen any evidence. He said, this boy needs his dad, and this dad needs his son. And he said, I reinstate visitation effective immediately, and we will restore visitation starting this weekend, which was the next day. And I then got to see Eric. We got to celebrate his birthday, which I missed. We got to celebrate Christmas, which I had also missed. And that then set a period of visitation, which I was able to maintain all the way through to the trial.
That's really great to hear. And CPS, they do play a role, you know, in an extent that if there is abuse, the children need help. And I'm glad that worked out for you that way. What we're seeing in a lot of areas are in some CPS offices is not the children's interest, but the financial interest. And we seem to be finding more and more agencies kind of leaning in that direction because they need to generate that more and more revenue every year. As they do, they get more kids, and they need more people keeping track of these kids. And
when I was with Jeff down at last July, at the Texas legislature's hearing on reforming Child Protective Service, that was something that I was really surprised that was going on here in Texas, that I had no idea that there were so many kids being pulled, and to the point that they didn't even have places to put them. They were sleeping in offices. And I began to question, well, why are we doing all this? And so that's why I was very, very pleased that Jeff convinced me to go with him down to Austin to be a part of the hearing. It was very educational.
Yeah, no, Jeff Morgan is a great guy. I've met him while he was there at the symposium too. And he's very focused on, you know, his, tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe his grandchildren are in CPS care or foster care.
I don't know that they're in foster care, CPS care. They were taken from him, or well, rephrase that. His daughter was, and I might be a little bit off. Again, my little fuzzy memory here sometimes, but there was an accusation made against his daughter, and CPS hinted strongly and never with any evidence. They indicated to his daughter that Jeff was the one that made the outcry. And even then, when it became clear that it was someone else, they never really backed him and tried to make it good with his daughter. And so he has yet to see his grandchildren for a couple of years because of the issue with CPS and allowing his daughter to believe that it was Jeff that made the outcry when it wasn't at all.
Right. And that goes right into the fact that these people in most cases are not trained to see abuse, let alone false accusations or abuse. And really, when you're talking about kids, really that's what they are, kids as young as 25, you know, taking care of these cases, they're at that age where if they make a mistake, they're just like, and you probably will never see them again. I mean, they'll quit, and you'll never know what actually happens. It's a travesty to have people doing these sorts of things who aren't trained, and then they're not held accountable for the mistakes they made. Now, after that, well, what happened? Was it that call that your ex-wife made? Is what led, or what problems did you have with your work? You know, you were a teacher, a grade school teacher.
High school
teacher, and so what was the outcome professionally for you?
Well, CPS went to Eric's school and visited with him, and he was in an elementary school in the same district in which I taught. And that, I'm not sure, I think that was a Tuesday that they talked to him. It was then on Thursday evening that they officially removed Eric and put him into care of a family friend that his mother got to choose. Then Friday, the next day, the principal called me into his office in the middle of the day, and he sat me down and he said, look, CPS has opened an investigation into you, and the consequence, we're putting you on administrative leave effective now. And so I had to surrender my badge and my keys. They escorted me back to my room, where I grabbed a couple of personal things and then was escorted out to my car. And they then the school district proceeded to seek to fire me, terminate my contract with them. And so I was very publicly disgraced as a consequence. Because of the CPS investigation, the Sheriff's Department began to investigate. A grand jury was convened, and they held, again, a grand jury hearing. They issued a warrant for my arrest, so I was arrested, and I had to turn myself in. That was absolutely humiliating, to be arrested for something I had not done, and to be, seek to be terminated. Being a teacher is all I've been involved in education since 1991, and the two things I loved the most was my son Eric and being a teacher. And in the span of a few days, they had taken both, and it was devastating. But I got to the point that I was hiding in my apartment. I was afraid to go out in public. I was afraid to, what do people think about me and say about me? And it was very difficult for me personally. And it was very depressing to have to go through this, when the simple fact that I was not guilty, I had done nothing other than stand up to Eric's mother and tell her no.
Right. We have, if any of you watching, I know like people like Brian Kinter are watching, if any of you want to call in, I just put the number up and ask Rod any questions. Please feel free. The number is 408-638-0968, and the meeting ID is 198-485-345. It's really incredible, and like we were talking before, I don't know if I ever had a chance before today to find out how your professional career was going. So today you're back as a high school teacher.
Yes. Yes. I have been teaching. I'm in my 6th year at a school district here in one of the suburbs of Dallas, and it's a great experience. I love it, and I have a lot of support. The folks at school, they knew what had happened. One of the benefits after my termination, after there had been a change at the administration or at the superintendent level at the district I was at that sought to fire me. And the new superintendent, after learning what had happened, said that, well, Rod, I can't bring you back, but I will help you get a job anywhere you want. So when you apply for jobs, you let me know, and I will make a call on your behalf. And to his credit, he did. And I think that played a small role in my getting on where I am now.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, having good teachers in the school system makes a huge difference. And especially a teacher who understands this process. I have, a close friend who's a teacher, and, because of the work I'm doing, he asked me questions about a certain case where CPS got involved, and he really couldn't believe how how CPS seemed to completely take over this child's life. Oops, there goes my phone. Oh, hold on. Wait, hopefully that's all right. And so, you know, I want to be very careful not to get too far into your story, and because I don't want to necessarily give anything away and take away from the impact that your story really has. Can you tell us a little bit about your book? Here it is, the book right here, For the Love of Eric.
Well, when I started this, it actually started during the divorce process, and people were telling me, Rod, you need a journal. Rod, you need a journal.
Yeah.
And I just started writing, and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And after the trial in October of 2011 was over, and I was trying to struggle to find meaning, I had someone reach out to me and say, you ought to write a book. And I poo-pooed it. I wasn't in the mood. I didn't see any benefit from it.
Right.
But it was a seed planted, though, and I thought about it and I thought about it, and my therapist said, well, go for it. So I did. So I started writing, and with the help of others, I started with my journals, and I began to just put it together. And I had Eric's first grade teacher is still a good friend of mine, and she said, well, you know, I got a lady I know who is a ghostwriter. Let me put you in contact with her. And her name is Melanie Hansen, and she was fantastic. And she helped me put my story together. And I realized right away, too, that I couldn't just tell my story. My story by itself, I didn't think was very interesting or compelling enough. So I reached out to a variety of others, and I said, well, I want your help. I want to make the story not just about me, but about parental alienation. I want it to be a teachable item, a tool and an arsenal, and however you want to phrase it. But so I reached out to Ron and Sherry Palmer. I reached out to Wendy Archer, or Wendy Perry, and I reached out to a few others, and we got their input. And so they contributed significantly to the second half, which is, what is parental alienation? What does it look like? What does it sound like? What are the words and phrases that if you hear, well, this is an indication that you're dealing with a severe issue of parental alienation? How to kind of recognize a bad case from a moderate case from a mild case. And so threw in a lot of great stuff that makes it not just my story, but a lot of other people's stories as well. Lessons learned, and therefore it's I think it's got a lot for a variety of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's you know, and I haven't read it. I wish.
Oh, shame on you.
I know. Every time I say that when somebody's on the show with a book, I remember this one situation where there was a radio personality that he had an author on, and then the person said, I just read the Cliff Notes. I didn't have time to read the book. My team didn't put this together very well, yada, yada, yada. And the guy lost it on him. Turned out it was a giant hoax anyways. It was another radio announcer just messing with the guy, but it was insane. And so I think about that every time. It's certainly a better situation to be in if I could reference certain parts of the book. But then again, I don't want to give away too much, because really your story as a whole validates why you tell the story, and how you tell the story is a learning experience for everybody. And having Wendy Perry's help, I'm sure she contributed quite a lot of her knowledge. But we're all evolving through this. Our knowledge,
Yes.
of course, gets greater and greater as we go along. And just the last year, it seems a lot a lot of this movement has been kind of coagulating. Everybody's coming together more and more. Somebody just called in. Let's take this call to see who it is. Hello, 2660. Who are we speaking with, please? Hello, 2660. You are on the Marchus Live. All right. Well, we'll see if they pop up. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they're just calling in to listen or if they're calling in to ask a question. So I'll keep them on and see if they pipe up here in a second. So how did you end up meeting? I mean, Wendy Perry's kind of geographically close to you.
Yes.
Right. So that makes sense. Well, actually, the Palmers are in Texas as well, aren't they?
Yes, they are. They're right. Also yes, they live in Denton or west of Denton, which is still in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex area.
I see.
We're anymore.
Right.
We got so many people moving to Texas.
A lot of people are. I don't know.
To answer your question, I met Wendy at a parental alienation support group meeting.
Oh.
And so I had met her there. I'd listened to her speak, and anyway, I decided to write the book. I had actually seen the movie Divorce Corps that she was in, and so I approached her one evening after one of the meetings, and I told her, hey, this is me, or this is me. I introduced myself, and I told her, this is what I would like to do, and would you be interested in potentially giving some assistance? And she was very kind and supportive and said, absolutely. And so we got to work, and she helped me with a couple of others. We put together the first ever parental alienation think tank in January of 2016, and that was really cool. And we had such a great response that's what was the catalyst for the PA symposium then this past April here in Dallas as well.
That's correct. Yeah, I heard all about it. I was woefully unaware of this movement at all in 2000, or at that point in early 2016. It wasn't until the summer that I became aware of the event coming up and everybody on Facebook. And so I really kind of made it my goal to meet as many people as I could. And, one of the people that I met, one of the first people I met who had a show, obviously, was Christy of Mommy Interrupted. And through her show, I was able to first hear of you. That was the first time I heard of you and the Palmers and a lot of people. And that really kind of helped change the way I looked at everything, being able to hear people and their experiences and all the different aspects of this through shows like that. And there's one of the first things I wanted to do was help people with shows like that, to have them on video, because it's great to hear people, but then to be able to put a name to a face in this way, to me anyways, is huge.
Sure, no, I agree. Though I have been told that I have a face for radio.
No, you're
a bad thing.
I wouldn't say that. You're a very handsome man, Rod.
Ah, thanks.
How long have you been married to your current wife?
Well, that's a funny story. I swore up and down. I said, no way, it'll be a cold day in hell before I ever get remarried. But through my work and interaction with a local divorce support group here in Dallas, I met this really awesome lady, and we just started spending time together. And I kept telling everybody, we're not dating. We're not dating. No, we're just friends. And anyway, we went to a wedding, a couple years ago, a year and a half ago. and well, maybe I forget, time flies by so darn fast. Anyway, we go to this wedding of a mutual friend, and in the preacher tells everybody that you don't marry somebody that you can live with. You marry somebody that you can't live without. And that really hit me, and I started thinking, well, do I want to spend my life without her? And I realized, no, I don't. So I said, shortly after the wedding, I said, so what do you say we give this dating thing a try and see what happens? And she goes, well, about damn time. So we did, and we dated, and then a year later, I proposed to her on Christmas. And she said, sure, yeah, I don't have anything else going. So,
right.
Well, anyway, so we then got married in May of 2016, and life has been fantastic. She has been an amazing rock for me. She helps keep me steady and grounded, and has been just absolutely awesome.
That's great. Yeah, it was great to meet her, and I felt honored to be able to sit with you guys at the center table in front, right there in front of the people speaking at the symposium. That wasn't my influence. That was the person who I was with influence. But it was great. Sitting right next to you and talking with you, getting an idea, because pretty much I had heard your story on WLINY on Mommy Interrupted, and people always saying good things about you, and then here you are, we're sitting next to each other eating dinner with you, me, your wife, and Christy. That was pretty cool.
Yes, it was. I thought that whole weekend, and again, the opportunity to get to know you and to meet so many fantastic people was so awe-inspiring for me.
Yeah.
And very humbling. The folks that were coming from all over the country, all over the world. And It was what helped when you said, hey, you thought about coming to the DC March. No, really. And you go, well, you need to come up. And maybe we could even get you to say a few words. There's a lot more important people than me, but you were persistent. And so, the opportunity to speak on Monday after the march became a reality. And my wife, Sherry, she says, well, I've never been to DC. Why don't we go? And I said, okay. So it just is going to work out. And to be able to reconnect with you and to work or walk with Cash and listen to him, there was a few of us that came from Texas up to when he was in Topeka, Kansas.
Oh, yeah.
To walk around and march with him. And, of course, I got family because I'm from Kansas. And so it was just a fantastic experience to be there in September of last year with him. So to get to hang out with him and everybody else that's going to be there will be so exciting. I'm really looking forward to it. In fact, I'm getting kind of geeked the more we talk about it, and the closer it gets.
That's great. It really is, because not only are we hoping to speed along change, to change the situation, but this is also therapy for us. You can't buy therapy like this anywhere else. And I know that when it comes to the event and everybody's there in person, any disagreements anybody had, mothers, fathers, anybody, it will just melt away, and people are going to have a great time. Another life-changing, moving experience for everybody, especially the ones who were this year, who were like me last year, who don't know anybody and showing up, don't know any of the inside goings on. They just want to find out answers, and that's what we who have been around now for a little while, that's what we're here for, is to kind of help guide people, support people, teach people, answer questions. It's really going to be great, and you're definitely one of those people who have a balance in their life after everything you've been through. It's an attribute to who you are, to be able to have moved on as well as you have professionally, privately and personally, and again, how you tell your story is really educational for people. And I want everybody to keep that in mind, that when you're listening to Rod, listen to not just the words he's saying, but how he's using his words and how he puts together his story. Because his story
you
is
set me up, and then people are going to have this high expectation I might fall short on.
No, it's okay, but it's just I want people to. I've been to a lot of rallies, and people always have the best intentions. They really do, but none of us have practiced public speaking, and it's very easy to go off and really the people we are trying to capture, the people who can make change, legislators, as soon as you go off on a tangent, they're going off down the road. So
yes, that is true. Well, 25 years of working in education and coming from a long line of storytellers might be put to some good use, and we'll get some great things accomplished.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to it. So since you're here, and since we have about 15 minutes left, I don't know let me check the caller real quick. Hello, 2660. Do you have a question for Mr. McCall?
Hi, yes. This is Lara Thompson, Denver, Colorado.
Oh, hey, Laura.
Hi, Rod.
Hello.
Hey, Ted.
Hi.
Hi, Rod. You can hear me okay?
Oh, yes. You sound great.
Lovely. Rod, I wanted to say that when I heard you talk at the symposium, your story may have been one of the more compelling, which made me scoff when you said that you didn't believe your story was compelling. It probably is the one time, despite my own case, which has been going since 2004, I'm now a professional mediator. But as far as your story goes, it's probably the one story that brought me to my knees other than my own. So I just wanted to say how much I really respected, as Ted said, you conduct yourself in an amazing way. You've had this incredible loss, and I just want to tell you that it affects all of us, and we're a huge community and family, and I just wanted to let you know that you definitely affected me. The reason for my call, as a professional mediator, I constantly have people, especially professionals, who will scoff at the idea of parental alienation. And I might suggest that your case is probably, if not the worst, one of the worst. What do you say to people who query or question alienation now that you know what you know?
When I have people, and I get it at school, I have a new principal, and I had to explain what it is that I do, that I teach during the day, and I do this evenings and weekends. And when people say it doesn't exist, I refer back to something that Dr. Warshak put in his book, Divorce Poison, that parental alienation occurs all the time, even in a healthy marriage where, kids will try and play one parent off against the other, and dad will say, "Oh, honey, don't be so mean to Junior." Or mom will say, "Oh, don't be so harmful. It wasn't that big a deal. Let Junior go." Well, that's normal. That happens. But yet that's a mild form of parental alienation, saying, "Oh, well, mom is the meanie or dad is the hard-nosed one." In my work with the divorce group here in Dallas, I've seen this happen a lot too, and I even engaged a little bit in parental alienation, where I would talk negatively about Eric's mother when the divorce first began. And many folks do. You're angry, you're hurt, but you realize I'm doing more damage to the kid. And so you stop. And then the third, and that's where working with many others, and this is where I push forward. I say, look, parental alienation at the third level, this severe case, there's a lot of things you can listen for. If you hear certain words where mom or dad is always bashing the other parent, they talk about the divorce in front of the kids, they want to change the kid's name. One of the stories that I include, I tell all the time is when Eric, we were together and she started trying to change Eric's name by erasing McCall and leaving in her name, her maiden name. And it's kind of like that's just one big sign. There's so many others that go on. And so these people that say it doesn't exist, I tell him, well, I used to think that too until I became a victim, until I began to educate myself. And so here, let me visit with you. And to the point that they do somewhat listen. And I have different lawyers who, in fact, my lawyer who was in my case, he said, Rod, I'm buying copies of your book all the time, and I'm handing them out to my clients that are going through what you're going through, so that way they realize that, they're not alone.
Right.
I don't know if I answered your question, though.
Yeah. I mean, you're doing what you can to disprove a myth that it doesn't exist. And obviously, it does. You lived it.
Well, many of us have.
Right. Well, I'll be seeing you in D.C. Am I allowed to ask one more question?
Of course, Laura. You can ask as many as you want. The floor is yours.
Okay. So, obviously, CPS got involved with your life and caused absolute havoc. Many of us have been through this, and obviously, some of the outcomes are certain PTSDs around arrests, and our children just removed. Obviously, the emotional harm and abuse to these children is enormous. My query truly is there anything looking back, because whilst you write a book and you tell your story and you hear other people's story, is there one thing that you would have changed to change the outcome now that you are had so much more education? Is there a pivotal point where you thought, you now know, maybe if I had done this, the outcome would have been different? I'm sure it's nightmares for you, but I really want to know, just so that maybe it helps me with other clients and cases too.
That's again, thank you. That's a great question. I have spent the last, here we are, 2017. I've spent almost the last 6 years asking myself, if I could do it differently, what would I do different? I would have tried to learn maybe more what parental alienation was. I really didn't know that it had a name, but yet I could argue, CPS. Well, CPS was doing their own thing, but they were being overridden by the court system. Eric's had his own guardian ad litem attorney. She saw through his mother's baloney. We had a court-appointed mental health professional. She recognized that there was a lot of things that were going on that were happening that would happen when Eric was with his mother that wouldn't happen or would be totally different when he was with me. They both testified on my behalf. Eric had a psychologist that was prescribing medication for him. And after she and I got to visit his month with me, she realized, okay, there's a lot going on here that I realized. And during our trial, she testified twice, and actually came back, and the second time she testified was as an expert witness against Eric's mother. And so I don't know what I would change differently, because in my particular case, everything was falling in line at the very end. That I guess when it comes to trying to educate on parental alienation, in my particular case that happened, what failed was what happened after the trial was over. And
so one question I have is, when you're actually arrested with CPS and had this criminal charge that obviously was dispelled, but did you have an attorney when you were actually arrested the first time?
yes, I did. When when the charges were filed, my attorney that I had said, Rod, I don't do this. He said, I can't do this. He says, I've got a friend. He says, I know a gentleman that went to school with. He said, let me give him a call. And so he paved the way for me to go and spend some quality time with a lawyer here in the Metroplex. His name is Charlie Phillips. And I had retained his services, maybe a week or two before the arrest happened. It was after I had been dismissed from school, but before the warrant had come out. And one of the first things he did was send me down to get a lie detector test, which I passed. And even though they're inadmissible in court, the sheriff's department looks on them with a great deal of authority. And so we used the same people that the county used when trying to figure out guilt or innocence. And so having passed that one by the people that they use lent a lot of credibility to my argument. But I had, yes, to answer your question specifically, I did have a lawyer before I turned myself in for the arrest warrant.
Yeah. I kind of feel like that was a mistake from the beginning, because, again, you're innocent until proven guilty. This is a juvenile law case of dependency and neglect. If, in fact, it was, well, they're pretending it was a criminal charge is what they were doing.
Yes,
so they caught you. Right, they caught you between two courts is what they did. And that's incredibly unfortunate. I mean, I'm sure you feel like, well, that was the least of the concern at this point. Well, thank you so much for answering all that. I kind of was trying to work out what would have changed things. And it sounds like you had an attorney. And by the way, I will say, I do understand that having an attorney is not always necessarily the right thing for everybody. But in this case, when you're dealing with parenting time or custody, unfortunately, what else do we have? Well, we do have great mediators. I will, plug mediation, because we do help people and we're not looking to fill our pockets. So anyway, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to meeting you.
You bet.
Cheers.
Same here.
Cheers.
Thank you so much, Laura. I really appreciate you calling in. We should make it a regular thing.
Thanks, Ted. See you in DC.
Awesome. See you then. So it's 9 o'clock now, but one thing I always ask everybody who comes on the show, because I have my whole thing is changing the situation, and I'm sure the listeners will start dropping off because they hear me always mention this, is, my solution is this. To me, the root of the problem, whether it's CPS or anything else, family court sets the standard for parental relationships. And that started in 1970 when we switched from action for divorce to no-fault divorce. Action for divorce was found to be unconstitutional, and that's great. Except not changing the process to action to no-fault divorce. What you have now is a process that's unconstitutional with two people going before a judge that did nothing. So my idea to try to change this is to change the situation and have actual civil contracts that people use to figure out these things while they're still in love, not while they're going through a divorce. So you have, like a lot of guys might say, look, I want you to have the house in case we get a divorce. The kids, 50-50 custody or somewhere close to that. And that's signed. If there's anybody violates that goes to a civil court where there's due process. There's no incentives. Who wins? You know what I mean? If there's actually an action for the divorce, that would go to a criminal court, not stay in a juvenile or a family court where it doesn't belong. What are your thoughts on my idea of that solution? Do you think that's a viable?
I think it could work. One of the wonderful benefits is that each state, due to our division of federalism or government, allows states to make their own decisions with family law. And as long as marriage is seen as a financial contract, then I think that leads itself to all kinds of conflict, because kids are seen as a financial asset or liability. And I don't believe that our civil court system was built or designed to handle the issues of divorce. And whatever we can do to make it less confrontational and less financially beneficial for encouraging and pushing and pursuing the fight between husband and wife is I'm all in favor of.
Yeah.
Take me back out of divorce, and I bet you we could see things get resolved a lot quicker, a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, the thought I have is if people's general perception about divorce is, well, we have a contract, we already have it figured out, you're not going to benefit by going to court, you're just going to waste your money. If that was the consensus throughout the country, nobody would go to family court.
Sure. And I think you're on to something. Take away the benefit of conflict, and then it can help reduce conflict to something maybe a lot more manageable.
Yeah. Then the family court system right now would be removed, but we could use the same workers as mediators and use them to help people instead of suck the money right out of them and destroy their lives.
Amen.
Yeah. So I really appreciate you coming on the show on short notice, and I'm really glad the path it took. I hope it really gets people excited to come and hear you speak. I'm going to be there no matter, wherever Rod is when he's speaking. I'll be right there. So if we haven't met until that point, come and meet me then. I can't wait. I can't wait to see you again, Rod, and hear your story.
Absolutely. Vice versa, and Ted, I appreciate you asking me to be on the show. And I'm very excited about what's going to happen next week in D.C. and all the fun, but also the real work. Dr. Childress said here in Dallas in April that it was a watershed moment. I absolutely believe it was.
Yeah.
And it is all the things that are happening as a consequence are just proof positive. Things are changing, and our voices are getting louder and louder. And as we bring it together to a single unified voice of change, I think amazing stuff will begin to take place.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. And I appreciate your positive attitude through all of this and your time. And I'll get in touch with you. I'll be there tomorrow. Tomorrow night. Tomorrow's Friday. Whew.
We get in on Saturday night, late Saturday night. But we'll be there.
Awesome. Well, I'll be in touch with you as soon as you get into town. Can't wait to see you, Rod. Thank you so much.
Hey, same here, Ted. You bet, buddy. You bet.
If you stay on real quick, I'll end the broadcast and we can talk some more. Hold on 1 second. So thank you, everybody, very much for watching the show live. If you missed it, of course, please run over to YouTube and subscribe. We need 10,000 views before YouTube reviews it and puts us on the main search engine and allows us to start raising funds through it for events like this. and that's just type in the marches on YouTube. It'll bring you right to the channel. And I'll see you guys all in DC. There'll be all kinds of live video there. I'll be filming. Other people will be filming. I've got my 360 camera. Hopefully I'll get right in the center of that march and you can see the actual march from just above everybody's head. It'll be great. So until then, you guys, safe travels. Make sure to bring food with you, water with you, so you're not spending a fortune on the road. It makes a huge difference. And bring money for the tolls if you're on the East Coast. So until then, love you guys.